dream. So the blonde is Yamamoto. He is 23 years old, 6 foot, 204 pounds, and the difference in weight for Takase, again, will be a dramatic story, as it was in his match against Jeremy Horn, as he gives up 34 pounds. There is Daijyu Takase, 21 years old, born here in Japan.
And this is meditation. This isn't the end of the fight. He is sitting there focusing down. Very quick. As we said, he probably is going to want to stay on his feet and strike with his opponent, but he's giving up a little bit of weight. And when I went ahead and looked at Yamamoto, what he's giving up is 34 pounds of what looks like a lot of muscle.
Well, Yamamoto has the build similar to what we will see later in our heavyweight title bout of a Kevin Randleman. Not as heavy as Randleman, but Yamamoto still structured in the muscle in the same fashion as Kevin is, and we will see him later tonight in the heavyweight matchup.
Now, it's going to force Takase to be very technical. He'll have to use his speed against somebody like Yamamoto, who possesses great submission skills. A complete striker, likes to use all facets of striking. The knock on him is he's a methodical fighter, which means you can be predictable, and that's something Takase may want to use to his advantage.
Overall, some of the Japanese fighters, because they work under different disciplines that are unlike ours in the UFC, where the punches fly more frequently, have been criticized in the past of being technical, because every little chess move can mean such a difference between winning and losing in pancrase or shoot fighting or some of the other disciplines.
Well, when you transition styles, it always forces you to refocus what your technique, what your tactic, and what your strategy is going to be for an opponent.
Tournament semifinal number 2. Takase and Yamamoto, Mario Yamasaki ready to get it underway.
Let's see if Yamamoto comes right out and starts throwing strikes to see whether or not Takase has the power. Wow, Takase, a leaping guard, and he drags Yamamoto down to the ground. Doesn't look like Takase is looking to strike here. It looks like he's willing to grapple. Interesting.
I think Takase might have taken part of a right hand from Yamamoto too, which all of a sudden he said, hey, I got to close this distance before I get into a toe-to-toe start in the first 20 seconds of my tournament semifinal matchup.
And Horn did very well here. He not only was able to strike from Takase's guard, he was able to pass it and continue to strike. Let's see if Yamamoto has the ability to pass guard. Seems as though Yamamoto here is living up to his methodical fighter label, in that even though he's in a position here taking his opponent down, he's not looking to really move very quickly. Takase tying up the left hand of Yamamoto.
I suppose if you talk about methodical fighters, that was the criticism that was placed upon our lightweight champion, Pat Miletich, for many matchups. But he said, hey, I win, I wait for my opportunity.
Win, baby, is the name of the fight game. And if you're not blessed with the most spectacular skills, still does not mean you can't be a successful fighter. Power to Pat Miletich for understanding his limitations, not trying to be a fighter that he isn't, staying within himself, and that all spells to discipline. And discipline, self-training, is really what gets an athlete to reach their potential.
So Yamamoto may perhaps have some of that patience then, being a virtue, as we see in Pat Miletich.
I'm very surprised here. He really hasn't done a whole lot of anything. Takase, a leaping guard, literally jumped up, wrapped his legs, and dragged Yamamoto down. But here, Yamamoto, it almost seems like he's pacing himself. Stamina might be a problem with Yamamoto, that he blows up. But nothing happening here. Much like the first fight, they seem to be measuring, they seem to be waiting, but when the floodgates open, watch for that flurry.
Well, this will be the first match since leaving the rings for Kenichi Yamamoto. Takase, as we mentioned, has been in the UFC before. This is a debut tonight for the 23-year-old from Osaka, Japan, Yamamoto. Fuji has already won the first tournament semifinal, and the two winners will meet later for the UFCJ tournament belt. The middleweight still ahead on our fight card tonight in UFC 23, and the heavyweights. Williams, Randleman, TK, Tsuyoshi Kosaka, all members of the Fight Club tonight here at UFC 23.
Well, what Takase is doing very well is each time Yamamoto tries to get up to his legs like that, now a flurry. Ground and pound happening. Not a lot of scoring there, but at least now it seems that Yamamoto is starting to go to offense. Up to now, it's just been Takase tying up his wrists and adjusting his hips each time that Yamamoto tries to move up on him He brought his legs up and tried to stretch him out again. Yamamoto there made a commitment to get to his feet from within the guard, and at least then he tossed a few strikes, but once again, he seems to be going back down.
1 minute, 40 seconds remaining here in round number 1.
Interesting looking at Takase, he's wearing a shirt. And most people abandon any kind of clothing other than the Speedo shorts so that you did not give your opponent an extra handle to hang on to. And Royce Gracie against Kimo way back when, Kimo just grabbed Royce's collar of his gi and just held him up and just kept throwing punches in there. Since then, I haven't seen too many people at all wear any kind of clothing but that Speedo. And it's interesting. I'm wondering why Takase is wearing the T-shirt. Oh, there's something.
Some head strikes to the midsection, which would not be considered a headbutt.
Well, the headbutt rule. Yeah, the headbutt rule was to protect the head. It wasn't so much to keep you from using your head as a weapon to the midsection.
How much damage can one do to someone's midsection, though, with the head?
I think what that is, it's sort of like slapping the side of someone's head. It's not really an effective weapon. What it does do, though, is go ahead and force you to adjust because he's hitting you where you're breathing in the solar plexus. And nobody wants to just sit there and take that. You want to twist your hips, you want to move. So it looks like what Yamamoto is doing is trying to get Takase to adjust, and what he's trying to do is anticipate what adjustment he's going to make, take advantage of it.
So it's a setup move for something else,
more or
obviously.
less, yeah.
Right.
I don't think if it was a real
as
effective
opposed
weapon,
to a strike in which you would finish the match up.
There's no way that's going to finish the match unless you're absolutely lucky and really hit the solar plexus between breaths and knock the wind out of your opponent. Then he's in trouble.
10 seconds remains in round 1, and again the same technique used by Kenichi Yamamoto, as this one was tied up right at the beginning of the matchup, and that is where round 1 is spent. On the backside of Takase as he utilized his guard fairly successfully, as Yamamoto really unable to strike Takase very much at all in the first round.
Well, except for those, couple of punches he threw in the first flurry and what would be classified as a head weapon of some sorts. I don't know if it's headbutting, because usually headbutting is against another person's head. An interesting tactic by Yamamoto, but I'm not sure how effective it actually is.
Once again, we are in Tokyo, Japan, UFC 23. Happy and thrilled once again to be working with our Japanese partners and to go global for the 3rd time in UFC history. We had promised many great fights in 1999. We have delivered on that promise. There will be many changes upon the new millennium, and we'll look forward to bringing you the UFC for many years into the 21st century. Right now, we are set for round number 2. Mario Yamasaki, once again the referee, as Yamamoto and Takase get set again. Oh! Kick, and he just missed.
Well, he also took a right hand that got thrown at the same time. A right leg to Yamamoto's head, a right hand to Takase's head, and it appears as though Yamamoto won that battle. It might have been because with the leg in the air, Takase's balance is very much at risk, and just the impact of the punch, even if it wasn't really a clean punch, would knock him down. But Takase's all there. Takase isn't stunned from that blow at all, but he likes it being on the ground. This is interesting. Takase, who says he likes to strike, wow, interesting way to pass that guard, and effective by Yamamoto, nearly takes Takase's back.
Trying to get the side mount. Takase showing great flexibility.
Yeah, there's also size difference here. Did you see him just wing that leg over like nothing? I mean, that's the power of Yamamoto, who at 204 pounds is ripped.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Takase still being able to move the hips in the similar fashion to what you and Frank Shamrock showed us a couple of years ago.
No.
On an earlier UFC.
Frank showed everybody. I just happened to be there.
You just happened to be the I won't say the stunt, but I'll just say you were the stunt man, okay?
Thank you. That was a learning experience, and certainly I'd rather not learn from anybody but somebody like a Frank. Very genuine, very skilled, and really the heart of a champion.
And these two young men trying to establish themselves now on a different level, as even throughout the world and in Japan, the UFC still considered the Super Bowl of mixed martial arts.
Well, I'm very curious now to Yamamoto's response. There was a huge flurry at the start of the round. If he's the kind of athlete that does blow up, which is why he limited his activity in the first round, he's gassed and he's breathing hard, and that might be the reason for inactivity. But really, Takase is helpless here. All he's able to do is hang on to the wrists and wait to see what Yamamoto is going to do. He's not tried to reverse, and every time they've kind of scrambled on the ground, what he's always trying to do is keep Yamamoto between his legs so that those big strikes don't come and hit him. So I'm trying to figure here what Takase has in his arsenal to force the fight from this situation. If he's going to lay on his back like this, I'm not seeing how he's going to win the fight.
Well, there is a rule, and Mario Yamasaki is aware of it, that when we get into a position, a neutral position as you could consider this, and there is not activity, the fight can be brought back up to the feet. And if Yamamoto does not stay busy, he's in danger of that happening. But I don't know if that is advantage Yamamoto, disadvantage Takase, or the other way around.
If one was clearly more active than the other, and the other was trying to disengage and what we call timidity, yeah, then there would be a foul involved. But here, and under the round system, unless that really occurs, there's not going to be a stand-up. But what you're telling right now, what I'm looking at is both guys really aren't doing anything.
So, Blatz, to truly clarify, in the past system of UFC rules, when we did not have the rounds instituted into our matchups, there could possibly be a stand-up here. But now that we have the rounds, that's why we see the fight continue as it has.
Exactly. The round system and relieving the responsibility of the referee having to make a subjective decision as to when to stand them up, the round system relieved that. But what I really would like to see from these two, and granted, you know, I'm not the fighter in there, and maybe, you know, they're tired and maybe they're afraid to try something because of what the counter may be, but more activity here would really help. And they're making their UFC debut, so you got to understand there's nerves involved here too. Obviously, Takase's been in it before, but first time here in Japan in the UFC.
Just about a minute remains in round number 2. This fight slated for 3 5-minute rounds, and the winner will take on Katsuhisa Fuji, who has already won in matchup number 1, the tournament semifinal that you saw prior to this fight, with an impressive knockout in the second round. 53 seconds now remaining in round 2.
Let's see if Yamamoto will try and flurry at the end of the round and perhaps influence the judges into giving him this round. It was a great flurry to start it all out, but boy, it's slowed down since then, and Yamamoto here really hasn't tried to improve his position. Takase continues to adjust and adjust and adjust, but giving up that size and what appears to be a dominant physical specimen, his opponent, he's having trouble really getting any kind of true offense going. It's all reacting to Yamamoto.
Again on the feet, Takase trying to land a spin kick. He went for the upper part of the body earlier at the beginning of round 2. Let's see if he tries to throw a punch here at the end. Knocked back down, but it really wasn't the strike that did it. He just was happy to get back down where he was more comfortable, and that is in a position to do the guard. Bell rings, round 2 is complete.
Takase, I don't think, wants to mix it up with Yamamoto on his feet. Quite frankly, that it seemed like that last blow occurred after the bell. But Takase is really challenged here. He's unable to do anything from his back to Yamamoto unless Yamamoto makes a big mistake. And on his feet, he clearly wants no part of exchanging strikes. So I'm not sure how Takase here really figures to bring offense into it. It looks as though he's trying to catch Yamamoto with some kind of finish.
Well, in Takase, in '98, and I talked about it at the beginning of the fight, TKO'd super heavyweight Emmanuel Yarborough, who was weighing 550 pounds. So Takase's looking for that quick strike, if you will, at the beginning or the end. But once it goes down to the guard position, he knows he's got to keep his opponent in tight or he's in danger.
I guarantee you that fight with Yamamoto, the sumo wrestler, did not go down to the ground. Emmanuel's a huge man, and you don't want to be under him. You can't move.
Right.
It's my understanding he ran around him in circles to the point that Emmanuel either got so dizzy or so tired he was no longer able to function.
He goes for the high kick again. It's same situation as in round 2. Yamamoto ducks under the high kick, and then it goes down to the mat.
To give Takase credit there, what he again is looking for a big finish, a one-move knockout, a one-move submission. He's going to end up on his back anyway, so why try to eat a few punches striking with your hands when you can go for that home run with your legs, and if you miss it, you're going to be in a position as a fall-off, your best fall-off position, that is guard, and that is what he has done. What I really would like to see here is Yamamoto go ahead and try something here from the guard besides let Takase grab my wrists and I'm going to base out and not move. And unfortunately, that's the choice of tactic or strategy that he's going to employ here. I'm not sure if it's his full strategy, but it seems to be, because he has not in the previous 2 rounds really done anything.
There's a strike. Right hand punch, but it appears as if Takase is just fine.
He set it up with that head thing to the chest.
Eugene Jackson, Joe Slick, Jason DeLucia, Ki Yamahai, Pedro Hizzo, Tsuyoshi Kosaka, Kevin Randleman, Pete Williams still on the card tonight, competing here at UFC 23. 3 minutes 40 seconds are between us and our first judge's decision of the night. Yumiki, Moriyami, and Fakasi are judges tonight.
Now, one thing a lot of jiu-jitsu people will do, and even rolling around people have done to me when I've tried to close my guard on them, is they will put the head into the solar plexus or stomach as a way of breaking the closed guard so that they have more room to maneuver. So it's actually creating maneuvering space. When the guard is closed, you have a lot less. If the guard opens, you have potential for a lot more. And that's why people go ahead and put the head in the chest or the belly to go ahead and do it. But this is the first time that I can think of in UFC history that someone literally wanted to use the forehead as a form of a strike to the belly and chest area. And that eerie quiet, it's just so hard to get used to. And here I'd almost have to, if I'm watching this fight thinking, you know, how would I be looking at it? You know, I would think that Yamamoto here would be the one that needs to start to move, and he's doing very little to initiate any kind of movement. And if he feels he's winning, I can understand why. But it'll be interesting to see how these Japanese judges look at this fight and score it. Takedowns go to Yamamoto, maybe one, but most of the others were just off balances from strikes by Takase.
And it isn't as if Takase wants to totally avoid being taken down. I mean, he seems to be comfortable in his guard, and Yamamoto has not been able to do any damage within the guard of Takase, who's very well versed in jiu-jitsu.
Literally, you can count how many strikes have been thrown by each fighter, and when you're talking about, you know, landing 10 strikes to an opponent's 5 or 6, is that a clear and defined way of assessing around? And in the rules, it says effective, meaning they scored, and they scored with effectiveness. It's not just how many you hit, it's how effective were the punches, and you really want to score the ones that were effective, not total number. So it becomes very difficult. There's been so few here that there's no real lasting memory of one really, you know, dominating or hurting the other.
Wow, there we go again.
Yep. Guard and
trying to jump into the guard again.
And here Yamamoto again is starting to work a little bit, grabbing legs, but once again falling into the guard. This is the most energy he's put out.
Yeah, trying to be much more active here is Yamamoto.
Rallying late, maybe because, again, he blows up when he does those kinds of flurries. Let's see if he'll start to move from here right now.
The crowd reacts for perhaps the first time in the matchup.
Well, they don't want to see it end up here in the guard. They like the fact that he took risks, that he got up, that he moved all around. That's what the fans love. Let's see action. Let's not just see basing out and waiting for the clock to run out. I don't mean to be critical. These two are certainly going out here and putting it out, but I would think even the fans are saying they want more action.
31 seconds remains in the matchup between these two fighters, Takase and Yamamoto. The winner to take on Fuji in the tournament final later tonight. 17 seconds now. Striking from the guard is Takase.
He's got to be careful with that elbow. No striking to the back of the head with the elbow, and that rule does carry over here to the UFCJ tournament.
Final 5 seconds now.
And it looks as though this is the way it's going to end.
So we will render a judge's decision, and the 3 Japanese judges will be forced to give us a winner in our second fight of the night.
That was maybe 3 total flurries in the first round near the end, at the start of the second. And then that looked like the start of the second right there, that big right hand along with the kick by Takase, and Takase wound up on the ground. And Yamamoto here looked for his openings, tried to pass the potential guard of Takase, but in the end it would be Takase always able, and look at him get away from those heels. He wanted no part of getting struck by a a foot there and a kick by Takase. Let's see how the judges looked at this, Mike.
First judge gives it to Yamamoto. Second judge Yamamoto. A unanimous decision for Kenichi Yamamoto. And he will fight in our tournament final against Fuji.